EQ is incredibly complex, and the more you look behind the scenes, the more you realize just how much it affects. In this video, I'll show you all the unintentional consequences of using EQ. I'll perform tests that require special file types to uncover what the processor truly does. By the end, I hope I can convince you of two things. First, to use EQ filters simply, and second, to reconsider using certain intelligent EQ techniques. So, let's get into what you don't know about EQ can hurt you. Starting off, let's cover EQ and the ADSR. So running an EQ in Plugin Doctor kind of shows how an EQ affects the ADSR, but it doesn't really show the full picture. Already, we could observe how a sine wave of varying amplitudes is affected, but to fully understand this, we need a pure impulse file. This is essentially white noise trimmed down to as short as possible. Using RX Editor and tweaking each sample, I was able to make a short burst of sound that contains all the frequencies with equal amplitude. This is what it sounds like. Notice that it's just a quick pop sound. What do you think is going to happen if I equalize the signal? For example, say I use aggressive filters on every frequency that's a C note. It should sound like the C note, but it shouldn't be longer than the original impulse. After all, I'm not changing the timing, just the frequency response. But listen to what happens. When using zero latency EQ, the original impulse that should be more or less just one sample now has a completely different ADSR. The sustain of the impulse makes it no longer an impulse. Linear phase fixes this issue, but it introduces another, commonly called pre-ringing. You'll notice a swooping sound before and after the impulse. This becomes worse the longer the latency. So what's going on here? Well, with zero latency EQ, the phase shifts needed to create the filters are great enough to significantly prolong the signal. Since some aspects are unaffected and not shifted, yet others are, the process signal now needs to extend from the start of the signal to the very end of the time that's required to create these aggressive filters. As a result, the process signal is significantly longer than it was before. As for linear phase, the filter used shifts this post-ringing to both pre- and post-ringing, causing a similar effect, but before and after the original signal. The amplitude of the ringing is also increased. The lower the amplitude of these filters, the less significant the distortion. For example, when I lower the filters to 10 dB, the ringing decreases for both zero latency and linear phase filters. Lowered to 6 dB and the ringing is decreased even further, and so on. So lastly, attenuation doesn't cause the same effect. For example, if I took all of these filters and made them negative 30 dB, we'll notice the ringing is reduced significantly. However, it's still present and easy to hear. So practically speaking, what's the takeaway from this? Well, the more aggressive your filters, the more you'll affect your ADSR of the process signal due to the phase shifts. Additive filters exacerbate this issue, but subtractive filters still have this problem. Hopefully, this makes you reconsider introducing aggressive filters at all. Granted, I was showing an extreme example, but imagine this effect if you use some 10 dB filters on multiple instruments. The effect adds up, and it might be so gradual as you mix that you don't even notice it, but you could tell by the end of the mix that something is off. And this brings me to my next point: be incredibly careful with intelligent processors. Now, Soothe 2 is a very useful plugin, but seeing how some people use it makes me cringe a bit. I saw a video saying to use this one trick on every mix, that is to sidechain the vocal while Soothe 2 is on the beat and then cut aggressively. To be blunt, that's terrible advice. Don't do that. As we saw here, high Q value, high amplitude changes to the signal drastically distort it. You could do it subtly. The negative effects are going to be pretty mild that way, but the more aggressive and numerous these cuts, the more you'd completely change the ADSR of your signal by adding this ringing distortion. It's a quick fix that really isn't worth it. You want your mixes to sound 10 times better, 10 times faster? Our Sage Audio membership will do that for you, or you don't pay for it. Literally, you're one step away from 10 times better sound, the same sound that industry professionals have. For instance, Keith Urban's producer Aaron Schurz works with us, Grammy Award-winning AJ Castillo, the Voice #1 Billboard charted artist Megan Lindsay, and the list goes on. Why waste your time creating mixes that look like this when you can instantly fix the problem by working directly with professionals who have already done what you're trying to do? We've made mixes sound 10 times better for 2,346 clients, and it'll work for you too. Watch until the end of the video to learn how the Sage Audio membership will make your mixes sound 10 times better, 10 times faster, or you don't pay for it. So lastly, let's cover zero latency and phase cancellation. Zero latency filters cause phase cancellation when used differently, but on similar signals. Now, I'm sure you've heard this before, but if you were to add a high-pass filter to one track of a multi-tracked instrument, it'll affect the phase relationship between them. So in Plugin Doctor, I could use the oscilloscope to observe what happens to the waveform as I introduce filters. If centered perfectly on the affected frequency, the shift in the rotation is minimal. But as soon as you affect the frequencies either above or below, notice how aggressively the signal is shifted in time. Again, the greater the amplitude change, the more aggressive the shift. Now, since I doubt any of us are making music that's just one sine wave, this effect will always occur when we EQ, since frequencies both above and below the center frequency will be shifted. If I have a nearly identical signal that isn't equalized, say another mic on a guitar cab or something like that, then this phase shift greatly impacts the phase relationship between the signals, resulting in phase cancellation. Here's what that would sound like. To sum everything up, here's what we covered. Don't use aggressive EQ filters unless you're okay with the negative effects that it has on the ADSR and the ringing and/or pre-ringing distortion that it introduces. Next, aggressive filters and similar processors will have a similar effect. Soothe 2 is a great plugin, but using multiple filters aggressively can screw up your mix pretty quickly, which is something that Soothe 2 will do unless you use its settings carefully. Lastly, aggressive filters means more phase cancellation between similar signals. If you need to use different EQ filters on multi-tracked instruments, linear phase is the best option, but as we've discussed, it also has some drawbacks. You want your mixes to sound 10 times better, 10 times faster? Our Sage Audio membership will do that for you, or you don't pay for it. Literally, you're one step away from 10 times better sound, the same sound that industry professionals have. For instance, Keith Urban's producer Aaron Schurz works with us, Grammy Award-winning AJ Castillo, Billboard #1 charted artist Megan Lindsay, The Voice singer Cody Ballou, Duck Dynasty's blues composer Mike Goudreau, Grammy Award-winning artist Toolis, Luke Combs engineer Alex Gilson, Grammy-nominated producer Tyler Kane, Warner Music artist Ricky Young, and the list goes on. Why waste your time creating mixes that look like this when you can instantly fix the problem by clicking the link in the description to work directly with professionals who have already done what you're trying to do? Stop making amateur mixes right now and avoid the pain of playing your new mix to friends and seeing the polite look on their faces, knowing they think the mix sounds amateur. All you need to do is click the link in the description, and that's it. Stop endlessly trying new plugins and chains from the latest YouTube guru. This is not how pro songs are made. Instead, click the link in the description, and we'll make your mixes sound 10 times better, 10 times faster, or you don't pay for it. It only takes 1 second to click the link in the description and get 10 times better sound. All you have to do is click the link now, and we'll do the rest. We've made mixes sound 10 times better for 2,346 clients, and it'll work for you too. Click the link in the description now. It's risk-free, and if we can't make your mixes sound 10 times better, 10 times faster, you don't pay for it. Click the link in the description. If you got nothing to lose, click the link now.